Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Elemental. I've been trying to fill my father's shoes, but I never once asked what I wanted to do. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Nate, and this is our spoiler-free review for Disney and Pixar's Elemental. Special thanks, as always, to our friends at Disney Studios Canada for letting us watch this movie early for review. If you are joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, games, toys, and collectibles, and all things geek-centric. Now, joining me for today's hot, wet, earthy, and airy review, he's always got his head in the clouds. He's Justin the Laurentium Lawrence.
Hello, how are you? Laurentium. That's kind of like Lawrence, so...
Yeah, man. Do you know what Laurentium is?
No, Nate.
Have you heard of it
Tell
before?
me what Laurentium is.
You're going to love this, because it sounds like something straight out of a Ninja Turtles comic. Laurentium is a radioactive metal discovered by the inventor of the cyclotron, which is a device that I guess is used to discover radioactive elements. But I was just like, I was trying to research elements that start with J. J isn't on the elemental table at all.
No.
And you know, I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't think J's deserve to be on the elemental.
Oh, dang. Okay. Sorry to all our listeners who have J names. But as soon as I said J wasn't on the elemental table, he started shaking his head. He's got his head in the clouds, but it's a different kind of smoke, and he knows a ton about the elements. He's Darcy, the Dubnium Hafnium Hudson. Hello. Do you know Dubnium? Do you know what that is? I don't know.
I like science and all that stuff. The lower half of the periodic table is just mystery
where we start to lose
half
you.
Of it is synthetic and made up elements and all that stuff. So yeah, I never got.
You're more into the natural elements of things.
Yeah, the naturally occurring.
Very cool.
Sure.
Well, I love, this movie features the classic elements, I think we would call them.
Earth, wind, and fire, bro.
Earth, wind, and fire.
And water.
And water. Don't leave water out of this. I wanted to ask both of you before we dive in, if you could choose to be an element in Element City, which element would you want to be?
Well, I'm all for the self pruning, so I think that I think I'd probably be an earth guy.
Just come over to your house one day, you're picking tomatoes off your head. I'm like, oh yeah, there's Justin.
So I think that's a fitting one for me. I don't know. I would say I'm an earth guy.
Okay. What about yourself, Darcy?
I mean, you mentioned smoke. Air is the closest thing to smoke. I feel like I'd enjoy that. Plus, it seems like nothing can hurt them, which seems pretty cool.
Yeah, that works. I like that. Yeah, true. Like, how would you just punch right through it, right? Like, there's no way to.
Yeah.
I think for me, I run way too hot to be a fire person. Like I've had to, just before we started recording, I had to turn off all the fans here. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking air, but then I'm like, no, water. Because if I was an earth person, I think my build fits like an earth person, but I don't like sand getting up in the crevasses. In the crevasses, Justin? When you get sand?
Specifically the asses, right?
Crevasses?
But I mean, you would just be sand, so would it
be
that
that
bad
right? Because then it wouldn't.
You're just used to it. Everything's gritty everywhere.
That's true.
Yeah.
At all
Grittiness.
times.
I'm not a gritty guy though. I think water I would go with. I like the idea of like reshaping my body or just like floating like a big blob. Like, I think it'd be great.
When he dances in this movie, oh my God, that was hilarious.
We'll talk about the dance. But just before we get to this review, I also wanted to quickly announce something. You might be listening to this review before you've seen the movie, but I know there's a lot of people that also listen to our spoiler-free reviews after they've watched the movie. And while you're doing that, you're going down your water slides, right? Or you're cooking up on your fiery barbecues this summer. You might think, oh, I wish I could say something about this movie to the fine folks over at Geekcentric. Well, guess what? Now you can. Our Discord is now open. We've got spoiler-filled channels for all the latest, greatest movies and series, as well as a place to chat about the latest news and trailers for movies, shows, video games, and also a place to recommend things that you might be enjoying, and so much more. Check the link in the show notes to join us, and let's keep chatting, because honestly, there's so many geeky, wonderful things happening. We are Geekcentric, and you can be 2. All right, let me tell you what this movie is all about. Disney and Pixar's Elemental is an all-new original feature film set in Element City, where fire, water, land, and air residents live together. The story introduces Ember, a tough, quick-witted, and fiery young woman whose friendship with a fun, sappy, go-with-the-flow guy named Wade changes her beliefs about the world they live in. It's directed by Peter Sohn and features the voices of Leah Lewis and Mamadou Athie as Ember and Wade, respectively. Elemental releases on June 16th, 2023. And congratulations, if you're listening to this review, to our giveaway winners across Canada for if you had the opportunity to go check out this movie. We hope you enjoyed it. Join our Discord. Let us know what you thought. Shortly and very soon after the movie comes out, we will be opening up a spoiler discussion channel on that Discord to talk about all the wonderful moments, all the jiggly moments with Wade and his dances. Let's get right into this. And right off the bat, like, this is a great Pixar movie. Pixar has always been, to me, in an element of its own, if you will. And this is a great Pixar movie. And I think one thing that I never understand how they keep elevating is the look of their films. And this one right off the bat is so delightfully vibrant. It's colorful. It's charming. And within the first, I'd say, minutes of this movie, they nail something that they're masters at over at Pixar, and that's visual storytelling. They give you everything you need to know about Element City and its inhabitants. I'd say within minutes of just watching the movie, you see how they're interacting with each other. You see how the whole world kind of works. And yes. I was immediately swept up on it, as I'm sure you two were.
Yeah, I think that was such a great way to get introduced to Elemental City, is how the science of it works. It really does open up the doors of the story that we're on, the journey that we're about to embark on. Focusing on Ember's parents and seeking refuge in Elemental City. I think it's such a profound beginning, but the animation is absolutely stunning. Like you were saying, it's groundbreaking. Peter Sohn and the entire team were committed to bringing this world to life with vibrant colors and fluid movements. There's such a meticulous attention to detail, creating, here's my favorite buzzword, a visual spectacle. I think the fact that
every review, visual spectacle.
Yeah, dude. It's a spectacle. I was in awe. And like you said, right at the beginning, and how we walk our way through Elemental City and we're introduced to this world, I was in awe at that. I think it was absolutely fascinating. And, the fact that this movie had farms of computers to process the look of Wade and Ember is nothing short of amazing. It shows Pixar's commitment, as you said, to evolve, to bring new elements into their fabric of storytelling. The characters come to life in this movie, and that's extended through the expressive facial animations or the personality quirks that each character has. And, everything is crafted, and it just captures the absolute wonder and enchantment of this world in its animation. It's beautiful.
Well, and I mean, think back to 2001 when Monsters, Inc. was coming out, right? Like, how do we animate hair and fur, right? And these different textures. Good job. They did a phenomenal job. That was groundbreaking at the time. Mm-hmm. And seeing this and seeing the fire,
Wade with the water. Oh my God.
It's fantastic, because they're not to me, like, watching this, I'm like, oh, they're not on like skeletal rigs. Like, they have found a way to animate a character of fire and water. And just all the different citizens of Element City having their own way of moving, right? And it's done in ways, it's funny because it's done in ways that you connect with and you would absolutely expect to see from air, from, Earth. But at the same time, seeing it on screen is so fantastic and so rewarding. Fire causing air balloons to float, or water characters doing a literal wave at an airball sports event is hilarious and expected. Darcy, did you find that the ways that these elements sort of intermingled with each other for your science brain, did that do anything for you?
I mean, for sure, they were following, our laws of physics while making up their own for this unique Element City. But I think the way that they made these characters feel so dynamic and fluid, and that their attitudes are affecting the way that they are appearing on screen to us, or even just when they're standing still, they're not really still because the fire's flickering or the water's flowing around. Just the dynamicness they brought to these characters was so cool, and every time, again, mesmerizing. As soon as these characters come on the screen, you're drawn to how they move around and how they interact with each other. So yeah, the animation is incredible.
And it's the animation with the science, like you said, Nate. Like, you referenced, the way the fire burns and, how the water jiggles and stuff, but even just the air. And like, there's a moment where air is used very inventively to create a protective cocoon, if you will. And I thought that was really cool, right? Like, again, it's just, it's bringing in the actual physics of what we would understand. It makes sense, right? It does make sense. So yeah, I think across the board, this balance between science and arts is very apparent in this movie.
Well, and I mean, I think there's a moment where Wade, the way his butt jiggles when he's cheering on the air breakers and he's shouting toot toot is hilarious, right? Or like, I think even just the way that they there's moments where they use water and some shots framed in some really poetic ways as well to emphasize certain moments within, like, using reflections. And we talked about, like, I'm literally getting right back to Into the Spider-Verse because that movie still won't leave my mind. But the way that they use reflections there felt very similar here, where it's so introspective, but at the same time it's very natural because it's happening within the actual environment and even off of the characters in this movie. I think it's so beautiful. Again, going back to that idea of visual storytelling. And I also wanted to mention, it's Pixar. The little details, the Easter eggs that make me want to watch this movie over and over again to catch. Like, I love that they're on like a date and one of the movies is Tide and Prejudice, right? It's so freaking good. Or just the ways that they can sort of, like, I want to see more of this, like, cloud basketball, air ball or whatever it's called. I want to see more of that world. I'd love to see this. This brings me back to Zootopia, where I want a short form series just like they did for Zootopia. Yeah. Give us that for Element City. I would love.
Give me a series of shorts with Claude. I think
just Claude going on dates, like just Claude doing like speed
or just
dating.
His life, like exactly, speed dating or just his life, because he was so funny. I think the first little moments that we got with him was absolutely hilarious.
I mean, again, the world building that Pixar brings to their animated films is always so rich, and this movie definitely lives up to that hype, because everything they're placing in here has a reason to be there, whether it's to flesh out the character of this random backstory or just build the world and introduce you to these different cultures and how they intermingle. It was, again, everything is done with purpose, and this movie highlights that to a point.
And I find that they don't, even with like their side characters, they don't introduce these characters that you sort of go, they were there for a second, they're kind of inconsequential. Inconsequential is the word I was going for. It's they introduce these characters and we want to see more. Like Claude, played by Mason Wertheimer, was fantastic. He's trying to hit on Ember, who is obviously like out of his league, way older than him, but he goes at it with such tenacity and confidence that you can't just help but love the guy. And it's just it's so fantastic. But speaking of these characters, I think Wade and Ember, I mean, I know for me, I connected with Wade so much. I love the meta humor with him being so sensitive, so supportive, and crying so much in a Pixar movie, which for me, it's a big deal if a movie can make me cry, and Pixar usually nails that. And yes, I did cry at least 4 times watching this movie.
I don't think it's that big of a deal that a movie makes you cry. It's just like a movie is going to make you cry.
But a Pixar movie at that point, it's always makes me cry.
For sure. You go to Pixar for specifically the reason to cry.
And I love that Wade is transparent, both literally and figuratively. He never tries to hide his feelings. You can always see through him, and he's literally clear.
Well, their personalities match their elemental side, both Ember and Wade.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she's super fiery and she's a bit of a rageaholic, and he's super sappy and super squishy, and he's water, right? So it's great how they've imbued those personalities into the elemental side, and it makes total sense. And I also think that both Wade and Ember are very well developed and extremely relatable. I think Peter Sohn has done a remarkable job of breathing life and personality into both of these characters and giving them depth and authenticity. And, Ember and Wade serve as the anchor to this story. And, I think Leah Lewis and Mamadou Ati, they were perfect voices.
Oh, yeah.
I think Leah is
Fantastic.
absolutely a firecracker that brings the rage. And, Mamadou was charming and delightful and extremely heartwarming. And I think they just brought such depth to them. And, the two are on such a journey of self-discovery, which I just think is filled with love, charm, and humor, with their own personalities and their own individual hopes, dreams, and flaws. I think that this movie doesn't hide the fact that both have flaws in a lot of ways. And they kind of see those flaws through their relationship with one another. I don't know. I found myself rooting for these characters, and as just wanting to see them grow and wanting to see their relationship grow. So,
well, I think that's the thing with Pixar is and we say this all the time, they always cast such a wide net in terms of the sort of ways that they want people to connect with these characters. And so if you can connect with the immigrant story of Ember's life, of being, sort of a second generation to her parents, who've moved to Element City, or maybe, I know for myself, I don't fully necessarily connect with that, but I do connect with her experiences in retail and her experiences of customer support and how frustrating the people can get in your life. I completely connect with that. And I think, it's really intriguing to sort of see how this movie handles all of these different, again, we use the word again, elements, but does it so masterfully in a way that, again, Pixar storytelling.
I think that's another meta level to the title, though, right? Is all of the elements that are at work here, not just literally, but like figuratively, in the sense of, as you described, like an immigrant story with a story of someone who's, I think very much the opposite of that has been given a lot of privilege, right, in relation to that. I think that's all why this movie works really, really well.
Yeah, and I think Ember's parents, Bernie, who she calls Afsha or Ashfa, and her mom Cinder, are also really great in this. I mean, again, they get to be characters of their own. They're not just sitting back and letting the movie happen around them, but they're also, like, I think it's really easy for a lot of movies like this to vilify the parents in these situations. Like, I'm not saying like Pixar movies necessarily do this, but there are a lot of movies that are kind of trying to follow this similar themes and storyline that really do make the parents out to kind of be the bad characters. And I love that they didn't. I love that both of these people are so lovable the entire time. At no point in time did I dislike them for any of their decisions or their actions. And by the end of this movie, you're gonna want to hug your parents or the people that take care of you, or your just your family and friends around you. Like, it reminded me a lot of Coco in that sense, with its messaging on legacy and whose path do you follow? Do you honor your parents? Do you honor your family? Do you chart your own path and hope they support you? And I think this movie absolutely nails that, but then it throws in the rom-com as well, which how could you not love?
I think the parents, though, felt very much like the typical parent situation that you would see from rom-com style story like this, though. You know what I mean? Like, they have different hopes and desire for their child, who clearly wants to carve her own path, but is exploring what that looks like, right? And they serve to kind of be the reminder of her past and what she needs to be, how she needs to respect her past, and I think that that's a lot of what the messaging behind Ember's parents is to appreciate where you came from, to understand what your parents have done and given, and that for a lot of immigrant families is the truth, right? They've come with their culture, their identity, so they're building something new, and that's very much the burden that Ember is sort of carrying in this movie. But what's great is, as you said, they're not villains. They're not perceived as villains. They are, very much characters that are there to help Ember along in her personal journey and her development.
And I think to encourage kids to maybe ask their parents, where did you come from? What is your history? How do we go from, because I think the other thing about it too is, yes, this is a kid's movie, but it's also a movie for everyone. And I'm thinking back to that age of when I realized, oh my gosh, my parents were kids at one point. You know what I mean? And wanting to explore those ideas and those thoughts and those conversations.
Mm-hmm. I really like the parents in this movie. Again, like you said, they're not vilified, and a lot of Ember's decisions come from her love of family and wanting to do right by them.
Yeah,
I
she
think
has
that's really
respect
cool.
for
Is
them,
that
yeah.
she was never not wanting to have anything to do with her family. They were always a very much an important part of her life and why she's doing what she's doing. So it was really neat to see how that aspect didn't change at all, but how she went about doing right by her family did. So it was a really enjoyable movie and refreshing in that sense, because like you said, they weren't vilified. You did root for them just as much as you were rooting for Ember and Wade. So again, they really took their time creating the parent characters, and I love them.
And thank goodness this wasn't a straight up Disney movie, or they'd probably just be dead. Let's be honest. But I think this is absolutely a rom-com. I think both in good ways, and for me, one way that narratively didn't fully work. But the fact that Pixar is exploring a genre like this that is usually reserved for older audiences and then bringing it in a package that everyone can enjoy, I think is absolutely fantastic. And I really hope they continue to explore different genres that they can add their Pixar-ness to, if you get my drift.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of the signature of how do you make your studio grow, right? And it is finding ways to do these genre mashups. We've seen the success with something like Andor with Star Wars, right? Earlier on, it was the MCU that was doing it, leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. They were constantly shifting with genres and giving you different vibes, and I think that's kind of how you get longevity and how you can build out your story so that they don't feel so cookie cutter, but they have elements that are nostalgic reminders for and enchanting reminders from other film genres that we know and love. So I think that's how you have to kind of look at it. And I'm happy Pixar is with Elemental, they're looking at it that way. They're blending in a lot of those elements, because it does feel like a lot of the sequences of events in this movie are so typical to the romantic comedy genre. You know what I mean? Like they just, in the way that they kind of flow. So yeah, that could be a positive, that could be a negative, depending on how you look at it. I saw it as a benefit, because at least it knew what it was trying to do. It knew the story that it was telling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember walking out of that movie with you, Justin. First thing I said was that was the best rom-com I've seen in a while, because they nail all those rom-com tropes in such a delightful and refreshing way that it felt new, despite kind of knowing where the story was going. You were engaged the entire time, and I think that's because they knew how to bring their Pixar life and vibrance into a rom-com story. And I
that's
loved
like
it.
how when you meet the parents, it's like, oh, here's the parents that want a life for her that's the same as theirs. Who the parents are and what they're going to signify in the outcome of the story.
And I also want to shout out, just while we're continuing to talk about the things we really enjoyed in the movie, I want to shout out Ari Leffen, Thomas Newman, cousin of Randy Newman, for the music. The music in this movie is so original and so calming at the same time, which you would think like calming is like, what you'd expect. Like it would be something that you would expect, and like, oh, I'm in a safe space because I'm nostalgic for this music or whatever. But this was so different, but still soothing. And they're using sounds in ways that I don't think I've ever heard before. And I love how it's different depending on what part of Element City that you're in. They're very much like sort of creating, not just the visual understanding or visual culture, but the auditory culture as well, which is super awesome.
It's the music is a symphony of delight.
So good.
Beautifully captures, I think, the cultural tapestry of Elemental City, drawing inspirations from our own world, our own diverse cultural world. I think the choices of melodies and rhythms, it just adds, like, you sense a calming, serene feel that makes you feel welcomed and absorbed in the world. There's a variety of instruments and styles that, I'm pretty sure I heard some sitar in there at some points, but then there's some hip hop and some very modern style music. It can be lively and it can be energetic, but I don't know, like, I think it's the soulful melodies and the soft, serene moments that really resonated with me emotionally. And I think the music just, in a lot of ways, it's the way that, like you said, Nate, that you see what they're doing visually with the representation of culture and identity through elements. The music is just that parallel that runs with it to help affirm that and just add that layer, an extra layer of confidence of this movie knows what it's doing when it's talking about all of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, I think it's just another element. If you listen, if you're listening to this, go back and re-listen to this, but then have a shot of water every time. Now, people aren't getting enough water these days.
No, do a fireball.
No, listen, it's the kids. We're trying to. This is for kids. Even though we said crevasses earlier. listen, let's just quickly, if there is anything that didn't work for you, we'll quickly shout it out here. Again, there's not a ton that didn't work for me. There was one aspect to the sort of the narrative structure for me. I think the third act, I think the pacing feels a bit too traditional rom-com for me. It kind of rushes to the finish like I think a lot of rom-coms do, and I think it would have been a little more impactful to have stayed in the emotional space that they introduced in the second act a bit longer, just to help the ending sort of hit more.
Yeah.
But I totally also understand at the same time they're working with a kids movie time budget here, right? This isn't a 3-hour Oscar bait movie. We praised Mario for being shorter.
God.
This is an hour and 42 minutes, and I'm sure they had to make some sacrifices for throwing in some unnecessary stuff for the kids in the middle that was, more important than something like what we would appreciate in terms of like pacing. I think
you nailed it, yeah.
I think, it's something I noticed. And it made the ending not work as well for me. That said, as I mentioned, I still cried a bunch. So who knows?
Yeah, I think like you said, they in the middle, there's some really great emotional stuff that might not necessarily speak to kids. It'll give them an awe moment, but I think it really does speak to the older audience a little bit more because they can understand the self-referential aspects of it. But yeah, I think that pacing, it does feel rushed towards the end. I will agree. And I think a lot of that, like you said, you nailed it on the head there. This is understanding who the audience is for.
Right.
And I think getting to that quick resolution was almost something that they needed to do given the structure of the movie and it is for a movie for kids, just like we said about Mario, right? Like a lot of people criticized Mario for not, I guess, going the distance with the story and keeping it really flat and simple. But it's for kids, and that movie did really, really well in grabbing that, a very big audience. And I think that could be the advantage to this movie, is that it doesn't, in a lot of ways, it's very direct in what it's trying to say.
I do agree that the third act does kind of change up the pace a bit, and it doesn't follow up what we got in the second act. But again, the characters are so engaging that I was still finding myself okay with the fact that we were glossing over some parts to get to the end there. And again, maybe it's because I do like rom-coms and how they always get to that happy ending really quickly. But this movie, again, just because the characters in the world is so dynamic and fresh, I didn't mind it as much that was the contrived ending that kind of we were expecting to get from a rom-com.
Yeah, I think, again, it's one of those things where when we do these reviews, again, us being geek-centric, we're going to be reviewing a lot of stuff that is aimed maybe towards a younger audience, and to all audiences, but towards a younger audience as well. And I think it's just the idea of we will recognize these things, but hopefully with the caveat that you understand that we're all 30-somethings. I think, Darcy, you're 30-something, right? We're all 30-somethings, talking about these movies. So I think we can understand and acknowledge it from a filmmaking perspective, but also at the same time, there's some leeway that we like to give some of these movies because of the, again, who they're aimed for. But let's get to our overall thoughts and final score for this movie, which we're going to be rating on a scale of 1 to 5. Get your drinks ready, your fireballs, I guess. 1 to 5 elements. And Darcy, I'm going to have you kick us off.
Again, this is a great Pixar movie. I always find myself enjoying Pixar movies while, trying to judge them as movies and not so much as the Disney diehard that I am. But this one really worked in a lot of ways that I enjoyed. Again, the Pixar spin on the rom-com was really fresh and exciting, and then the world they gave us being so vibrant and rich of culture and just it makes me want to go back for more. Like you were saying, Nate, I want shorts or something returning to this world because there's so much potential there for some really fun visual storytelling and just emotional storytelling as well. So this one is easily getting a 4 out of 5 elements for me, because I would highly recommend it to anyone checking it out, because it's a fun rom-com that happens to involve, water and fire, opposites attracting, and everything that comes from that is so delightful.
So good. Justin.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you. Elemental is great. It's incredible ability to seamlessly blend a rom-com style story with a heartwarming coming of age journey in a diverse world of cultures is simply magical. It beautifully captures the essence of self-discovery and celebrates the richness of our own global tapestry. I think a huge shout out, obviously, to Peter Sohn and the entire Pixar team for their commitment and the passion to bring this movie to life, because it's clear this was a meaningful film that they very much put themselves into wholeheartedly. As you mentioned, The film showcases stunning animation and brings everything of Elemental City to life. The colors, the attention to detail, it's incredible. The characters of Ember and Wade are well developed and relatable and so charming and delightful. And on top of that, the music beautifully captures the cultural tapestry of both Elemental City and our own world. And now I know that there's valid criticism for the pacing of the story or how themes are handled. I admire this film and its ability to be direct with its message and know its audience. This isn't only a film for kids and families. This is a film for those who come from immigrant families. And I think there's no point in beating around the bush. There's, mincing your words, speak your truth and tell your story. That's what Elemental is all about. So I'm giving it 4 out of 5 elements.
I'm glad there wasn't like a side story of beating around the bush. One of these characters in there just constantly. This movie is, as we were all saying, it's entertaining, it's heartfelt, it's going to make you cry. It's a rom-com for all ages. And Pixar makes that work, which is so cool. It's delightfully inventive. It's vibrant. The movie is funny. The movie is really funny at times. And I
chuckled a whole bunch, man.
Chuckling all over.
Yeah.
And I can't say that this for me is A-tier Pixar, but it is certainly close. I think it's a bit messy in its pacing, like we were saying. I think the jokes might be a little too on the nose for older audiences, but Pixar knows how to craft these stories that can reach out and touch everyone while at the same time teach everyone. And I think the movie provides some much needed perspectives within their storytelling. I think you absolutely need to see this with the people that are closest to you, not just kids, parents, other adults, grandparents, because this movie's message, I think, will spark conversations that need to be had and should be had around diversity and legacy, and how, I think the biggest thing that I took away from this movie is everyone grows up in different ways with different values that need to be respected. And I think that was a kind of the biggest message, at least that I got out of this movie. And I love how much, I've only read and seen interviews with Peter Sohn, haven't had the chance to meet him. But, seeing how much of himself from what I've read and seen is put into this movie, you can tell it comes from such an authentic place. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's how all movies should be made, really. I had an absolute blast with this movie. The 4th time I cried in this movie was literally at the end of the credits. There's a beautiful message dedicated to Peter Sohn's parents, and I won't read it off. I want you to read it. I want you to read it for yourself, and you can cry and leave the theater blubbering like I was. I'm gonna give this the same number of times it made me cry, 4 out of 5 elements. And that is it for our review of Elemental. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on this movie, did it make you cry? Does your butt jiggle like Wade's does? I don't know. Maybe don't write in about that. But if you want to write into the show with your thoughts, let me just funnel you into a tube so you can flow over to Justin, and he can let you know how you can reach us.
Well, they can reach us
Goodness.
at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or they can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
Toot, toot. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies, TV shows, including our spoiler-free reviews for Flamin' Hot, Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which we also have a spoiler-filled discussion out for as well. We have our spoiler-free review for Season 1 of American-Born Chinese, another really fantastic story talking about legacy and an immigrant story. Really, really good stuff. Disney's The Little Mermaid and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We also have a ton of other interviews out now, like our recent interview with Sophie Thatcher from The Boogeyman, as well as our upcoming interview with the director of this very movie. I was kind of teasing it earlier. I didn't get to sit down and meet Peter Sohn, but Justin, you did. Anything you want to tease about that interview?
I've kind of teased it in this review. Peter shared a lot about what he brought personally to this movie and what the team brought. And I think that you see it in this movie, the love and attention that went to telling this story. The interview was great. I'm looking forward to sharing it with everyone later this week.
Very cool. You can catch those interviews, that interview and those other interviews here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. And make sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all the geeky goodness we've got coming at you. The summer of movies continues. The hot geek summer, as I like to keep calling it, although no one else will acknowledge it.
I call it the hot geek summer. Yeah,
I
appreciate
don't. I won't.
I called it. I referred to it in another episode.
At least I'm not
it's
saying it's the wet
summer.
geek summer or the whatever.
No, hot geek summer, bro. Yeah.
And we've got so much more to look forward to, including our coverage of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, with possibly an interview with some of the cast from that movie, and our upcoming review for Asteroid City, the new Wes Anderson film, as well as our upcoming Watch Club. We got another Watch Club coming up for Secret Invasion. We've got so much, like already done so much, and we've got so much more coming down the pipe. That was another water reference. Justin, Darcy, thank you so much for joining me for this fiery, watery review. And as we say, love ya.
Laters.
Peace.